Hi, everybody. Today is Saturday, February 28, 2026, and our dear friend Larry Johnson is here with us. Welcome back, Larry. And we are in a sad, very sad position.
Yeah. I wish I wasn't seeing you on a Saturday. That's usually not
Yeah,
good news. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
seeing you on a Saturday is like, the phone calls that come to you in the middle of the night. They're usually not calling to say, "Hey, you won the lottery."
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
or, "Hey, we just had a baby." It's just, someone's died. Or in this case, the United States has lost its goddamn mind and decided to start World War III.
Yeah. Larry, so far, I know that you're following the news coming out of Iran, coming out of the region. So far, it seems that the United States has started the attack with, the attack on the leadership of Iran, the president
They
of
tried
Iran,
to.
supreme leader of Iran,
Yeah.
and the attack is going on, and they're trying to attack the launchers, of the missiles, and we've seen the Iranian retaliation in the region and beyond the region going to Israel as well. What is your assessment on the current situation of the war?
Israel and the United States have kicked over a hornet's nest, and they're susceptible to, anybody that can get stung by a hornet. They're susceptible to anaphylactic shock. In other words, the body's reaction to being stung can kill them. And I think that's exactly what the United States looking at Israel and the United States. The United States has a lot of initial power to hit on, can launch this massive strike. Yeah, okay, good. But they keep forgetting how big Iran is. It's not, you're not taking out a city block. It's an enormous country, you know, 4 times the size of Iraq, which the United States, there we had every military advantage we failed to subdue. It took us more than a month to get our troops. So we started in March. It took us 2 months to get troops up to Baghdad. And then even once we secured it, remember George W. Bush with his mission accomplished. Then that started an internal insurgency. This is so misguided and foolishly planned. They assumed that there was such popular support for an overthrow of a regime that all they had to do is just kill a few more. Yeah. And you and I have talked about this before. That the reason the West believed that is the CIA, using a cutout through USAID and National Endowment for Democracy, was having a public opinion poll published through a group that was based in the Netherlands, GANAAM, GANAAM, and this other thing, Visifon, I think it was VPN, out of Canada. And so they'd conduct online surveys, and those surveys would say, "Oh yeah, 8 out of every 10 Iranians hate the Ayatollah. They want to get rid of the mullahs and overthrow the Islamic Republic." And so Donald Trump's told that. They believe it. The people around Donald Trump believe it. At the Department of War, Department of Defense, they believe it. And so once you get your mind wrapped around and you believe something, but it's false, but you still believe and you act on it. And so they really thought that they could kill the Ayatollah, kill Pezeshkian. Good God, why do you want to kill him? Some Iranians would argue he's been a tool of the West. This is the second time that the United States has used peace negotiations as a tool to fool, as a ruse to dupe the Iranian government and Iranian people. Going forward, if the United States wants to come do negotiations, 2 words for them. No, 3. Go fuck yourself. That should be Iran's response to the United States. The fuck off. You're going to talk with missiles now. And the only terms Iran will accept is full lifting of sanctions and the United States back the hell off, get its military bases away from Iran. Otherwise, keep the Straits of Hormuz shut off 25% of the world's oil, and keep destroying those military bases until Qatar and Arab Emirates and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia kick them the hell out. U.S. has no business with military bases on Iran's borders. That should be Iran's position. And you know what? I think they're going to be in a pretty strong position actually to demand that. Because what's the United States going to do? Yeah, they're going to continue to try to escalate. And they've got plenty, or not plenty, but they've got enough offensive weapons. Yeah, they can continue to attack Iran. But the air defense systems that they have are going to run out of missiles. They don't have replacements for the Patriot. They don't have replacements for the THAAD. They got a limited supply of those. And Iran right now looks like it's shooting out decoy missiles. It's shooting out older missiles and drones. It's sucking up the air defense systems of both Israel and the United States. Those will be depleted. Then once they're depleted, Iran's got carte blanche. They'll blow the hell out of the air bases and Prince Sultan Air Base and Mawafaq al-Salti in Jordan. And they'll level Tel Aviv and Haifa and destroy the oil refineries there. So, Israel and the United States, they think they've got the military strength to defeat Iran or can inflict enough pain on Iran. They don't know what pain is. The Iranian people do. Iran went through, 300, 400,000 that died in that 10-year war that the United States helped inspire? So we're underestimating the resolve. And this attack today just reinforced the patriotism of the Iranian people. Even some who didn't really like the Ayatollah are pro-Iran today. That's what these outside attacks do. They rally the people together. And that's where, I think Iran right now is being pretty smart. They're going after military targets. They're not trying to kill civilians. And we've already seen, how many, 57 schoolgirls that were killed, murdered by, it's not clear if it was a U.S. missile or Israeli missile, but the blood of children. That's all we're good at in the West, killing children and the Zionists. So this is just the start. And I think Iran, I'm hoping Iran learned its lesson from last June, because they were convinced to make a deal with the United States to stop, one more round of attacks and it will stop. No, you don't stop until the United States is begging for you to stop. And that's what Trump, they're going to have to humiliate Trump, and they should, because this was avoidable. Once again, we're told on, that this is where Ray and I had our disagreement on Judge Napolitano's show. And I was hoping and praying Ray was right. But what I saw was Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner go to negotiations, and they come out and said, yeah, we think we got some progress going. But I said, I want to wait and hear what Donald Trump says about the progress. And what Trump said the very next day was, nope, not good enough. So Iran had said what Donald Trump said they needed to say, but even when they said it, it wasn't good enough. So that told me that it didn't matter what technical talks were going to take place in Geneva. They were going to war. And sadly, I was proven correct. This is one, like I said, I will wish to God that I was wrong. But now that we're in it, it is up to Iran, with the support of Russia and China, to just beat the living hell out of the United States and out of Israel. Beat them to the point that they'll leave Iran alone.
Larry, so far what we've seen is this lot of attacks on the military bases, on the U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf. Mostly they're focused on the Persian Gulf right now. They have sent some missiles to Israel and drones to Israel, but they're mostly focusing on the Persian Gulf. What is the strategy? Because IRGC, before coming up, said that the Strait of Hormuz is just closed and nobody can pass that. And what is the strategy? What is going on in the mind of Iranians, in your opinion?
Well, cause attrition to U.S. air assets, or make it impossible, impose costs. right now, if they're able to base out of Prince Sultan Air Base and out of Mawafaq al-Salti in Jordan, and if I'm mispronouncing that, my apologies to whoever's listening. But if Iran can destroy those air bases, the U.S. has got to relocate somewhere. And when they have to relocate, that means they got to fly a larger distance. And they've got the problem of air refueling. So it becomes much more costly. And that's what I said. This is the United States is not built for a long, drawn out conflict, one of attrition. And unlike, with the engagement with the Houthis last March, the Houthis were firing maybe 1 or 2 missiles every other day. Iran's going to be firing hundreds a day. The United States will never have seen anything like this. I don't have evidence of this, but my belief is that Iran's stockpile of missiles is closer to 20,000. It's underground. And they keep saying that they haven't even demonstrated their most capable missiles yet, that's coming. So, like I said, this is the United States has limitations. They only produce 700, let's say 800 Patriot missiles a year. And when you realize that you got to fire at least 2 missiles, 2 Patriots for every inbound Shahed drone, do the math. If Iran has 400 drones, you think they got 400 drones? Absolutely. They fire 400 drones. That's 800 Patriot missiles gone, poof, like that. That can be done in one day. And that's a year of production gone. The same thing with the THAAD, the Theater High Altitude Air Defense System. And the same with the Israeli Iron Dome. They got the launchers, but it's like they don't have the ammunition. There's not an unlimited supply of that. It's extremely limited. And it has been depleted in part by the support that they provided Ukraine over the last 4 years. They've bled through an awful lot of ordnance on that. So, and the destroyers that are out there to protect the aircraft carrier, they've got limited, they only got 96 missile tubes. And they're on the assumption that they're only going to have to fire 1 or 2. Again, Iran's got a massive missile force that if they decide to employ it against those targets, they can compel the United States to retreat from the area because they'll run out of defense missiles. So Iran, I think, has a lot of cards to play. They've got submarines, they've got frigates. Some of their naval capability has been destroyed, but not all of it. And they don't have to even have any ships in the Strait of Hormuz because they can fire anti-ship missiles from shore that can effectively close it. So the countries in Asia that are dependent on oil, China was stocking up beforehand. So China knew what was coming. But the other countries are going to scream bloody murder, and they're going to put pressure on the United States and Israel to put an end to this madness. Because Iran's attitude is, we were minding our own business. Those motherfuckers attacked us. And excuse my obscene language, but that's exactly how I feel about it. This was the same as Adolf Hitler telling his army to attack the Poles on September 1st, 1939. That didn't work out too well for him either over the long run. And I think what has happened here is that Donald Trump has done what George H.W. Bush did, lied to the American people. George H.W. Bush promised, read my lips, no new taxes. And then what did he do? He imposed new taxes. People remembered. They were furious. Now, Trump and the Republicans, they're going to take a more severe beating than they were potentially headed for. This Israel first nonsense has got to stop. Absolutely got to stop.
Yeah. For 8 hours, we haven't heard from Donald Trump, but he had an interview with the talk with the Channel 12 in Israel. He said that I have many exit strategies,
Yeah.
many exit strategies from the war. I can choose to make it a long or I can make it short. We'll see. It seems that he's feeling somehow. You know, the first video he published when the attack has happened was that people of Iran, we've just done our attack on Iran, and it's your time to come out. It's unbelievable,
Yeah.
and he's repeating those 33,000 people were killed and all of that nonsense that he's trying. And I'm not sure that he's knowing what he's doing.
Yeah, well, actually, I think one of his exit strategies, listening to him, let's see if he does this. This war, the attacks will go on for 3 or 4 more days. And then he'll announce, look, we've done everything. We did this in the hopes, we understood that the Iranian people wanted to rise up and overthrow the brutal Islamic regime. And we gave them a chance. We did what we came to back them up, and they haven't responded. So it's not our fault. We tried, but those dumb Iranians, they just they didn't rise up and do what they're supposed to do. So we're wash our hands of this and move on. Again, what's the incentive for Iran to stop blowing up U.S. military facilities? They've already destroyed the Fifth Fleet headquarters that's there in Bahrain. I think that's now unusable. I haven't heard about Al Udeid, but hopefully they've taken that out, that they've blown up the Combined Air Operations Center. They've blown up the different mess facilities, make it unlivable. And then, the United States is going to have to withdraw forces from the region. But, Iran's controlling, they're controlling the game now. Yeah, they're going to take, the Iranians are going to die, and they're going to suffer some damage. But, what the United States has failed to understand is the tenacity of the Iranian people. Look at what they were able to endure during that 10 year, and you were too young for this to remember, but what they endured during that almost 10-year war with Saddam Hussein. And, hundreds of thousands dead, not just, dozens. So, in Iran, really, they've been bullied so much particularly by Trump, and not just now, back when they killed Soleimani, and go back to Obama in 2012, all the assassinations of Iranian scientists. I think Iran has turned the cheek and turned the cheek and turned the cheek. I don't think there's any more cheek turning for Iran. I think they're going to continue this and press it forward until Iran's interests are satisfied. And that's good. And one of those key ones is all of these economic sanctions have to be lifted, and lifted immediately. And until they're lifted, we're going to keep bombing Israel into the Stone Age.
Larry, do you see Iran going with the same strategies that they had during the 12-day war? They started with a large amount of missiles and drones. Then they reduced the number of drones and missiles just to be more strategic. It seems that they started in the initial hours, they started with the same strategy they had at the end of 12-day war.
Yeah, exactly. That was a smart strategy. Only this time it was much, much more expansive. I mean, during the 12-day war, the target was Israel, and Israel's a relatively small area. But now they're going after the U.S. military bases in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and United Arab Emirates. They took out apparently this massive radar system that could look out, something like 5,000 kilometers. That's dead. It's gone. So they've been blinded in that regard. I don't know what the backup is, but I think Iran, with its underground missile cities and its underground, my understanding, underground manufacturing facilities. That, above ground, the United States and Israel can continue to cause damage. And we'll see, again, I don't know how extensive the air defense system is, how effective, if Iran has developed effective countermeasures for the electronic warfare capabilities of the United States and Israel. So there are a lot of complexities here, but in terms of who's got the advantage, in terms of being able to sustain losses, I'd argue Iran's got that advantage, not the United States.
Larry, Donald Trump, did this decision come from Trump himself, or you see Israel being the main driver of this decision? Because many people are arguing that Donald Trump, as you mentioned, Ray was one of them. I was one of them. I thought that this war cannot happen because we thought that Donald Trump would be wiser than it is right now that what has happened. And how because talking to Iranians, they know that their strategy would be a long war with the United States. The United States cannot sustain that sort of war.
Right.
How Israel would work for the United States to support the United States for such a war if Iran tries to make it a long war?
Well, again, part of it revolves around the fact that the Israelis and the United States intelligence community, they've been lying to themselves. They'd convinced themselves, and we saw it in a recent article by Cy Hirsch. And I don't blame Cy for it, but he was being told by one source, I think if it wasn't Israeli, it was U.S. intelligence, but he's told by this one source that the Iranian ballistic missiles had been wiped out last January or last June. Well, what do you think now that source no longer should have any credibility with Cy? But I guarantee you, Cy wasn't the only one who was lulled into believing that. I mean, the top leadership of the U.S. intelligence and defense community, as well as the president and the Israelis, have convinced themselves, oh yeah, Iran is so weak and so fragile. All we got to do is just this little attack, and the regular army is going to rise up and overthrow the Ayatollah. Not going to happen. And so, what we're faced with is this is going to be a war of attrition, and the United States is not in a position to fight a war of attrition, nor is Israel. I would argue Iran's actually they got an advantage here that neither Israel nor the United States, even working together, don't have.
It seems that the United States is using fighter jets to intercept the drones over, Iraq. And how is that going to work in a long run? Because if you start, intercepting drones with fighter jet, so what would be the outcome of that for you?
Yeah, but again, it's depletion of the armaments, and the more those planes have to go up in the air, they then require maintenance, and so then the whole logistics tale of keeping these planes maintained and able to function properly. So if I'm Iran, let's think back to the great Muhammad Ali. Ali's rope-a-dope strategy, where he would lay up against the ropes and cover himself, and the other people would punch themselves out. They punched at him so much they got tired, and then once they were tired, then Ali could finish them off. And I think there's an element of that strategy with Iran. We still don't know the full scope and extent of support that is provided by China and by Russia. But again, if I'm Russia, I'm looking at this, what has happened, and realized Steve Witkoff went and made promises to
the guy is just lying. The guy is a professional liar.
Well, I don't know if he's a liar or if he's just weak. Maybe he really believed that, but when he gets back to Washington, they say, "Oh, shut up. No, we're not going to do that." So he's got no power. His word doesn't mean anything. So it's like, why talk to him? If if he can't deliver on what he promises, why even waste 5 minutes talking to the guy? And that's why I say one of the outcomes of this is Russia's going to say, Witkoff will come, hey, Vladimir, I'd like to come visit. And Putin will go, Niet, I don't need to see you. You got nothing. You haven't delivered on a single promise you made to us. And then here you are breaking every promise to Iran. They were supposed, Iran wasn't telling the United States at the time, oh, go fuck yourselves. We're not going to, no. Hey, we'll find a way to negotiate. We don't want a nuke. You say you want us to say we don't want a nuke. Fine. We don't want a nuke. And so let's meet together and work out the details so that we can assure you that we're not going to get a nuke. And the United States instead, with Israel, has attacked Iran, and there are 57 dead girls, school children, murdered by the United States and Israel, murdered by them. This was an incidental. This is murder. And I'm outraged by it because those kids should be, they should be getting out of school and worrying about their homework instead of being killed while in school. It's an outrage, absolute outrage.
The mainstream media, Larry, is obsessed with this question that where is the supreme leader of Iran? They're asking the foreign minister of Iran, they represent deputy foreign minister. They're asking if the supreme leader is alive.
Yeah.
I don't know where does this come from because they're so obsessed that they think that if they kill the supreme leader, that's going to be the end.
Yeah, he's already
dead. They cannot understand this is not the end. Let's assume the worst case scenario. Let's assume that they killed the supreme. I would say nothing would change.
Yeah.
These people don't understand that. And here is what Ali Larijani, he is the head of the Security Council of Iran, just tweeted that we will make the Zionist criminals and the shameless Americans regret their actions. The brave soldiers and the great nation of Iran will deliver an unforgettable lesson to the hellish international oppressors.
Yeah.
He's the most powerful, he's in the most powerful position after the supreme leader of Iran, just tweeting. And they were asking about his, situation as well, because they said that they killed Ali Larijani as well, but he's alive and he's just tweeted. And this, I think most of this sort of delusion in the United States comes from the intelligence they're getting from Israelis.
Yes, I guarantee that. Absolutely. Because the United States doesn't have good human sources like the Israelis have had good human sources. They've worked the Kurds, they've worked the Baluchis. And I'm sure they've got even some Azeris signed up, a few Persians. But, they built these networks up. But what we also know is those networks have been significantly compromised. One is a result of what happened last June. And then more recently, this failed color revolution that was launched on December 28th, and that was finally wrapped up by like January 10th. So Iran's counterintelligence services were able to go out and start identifying people who were involved in those networks. So neither Israel nor the United States has the strength of network that existed a year ago. And on top of this kind of cowardly attack, again, killing these children. But Israel doesn't care. They've already killed close to 20,000 Palestinian children, and the world doesn't care. So, it's up to Iran to make the world care. And unlike the Palestinians who aren't sitting there on a pile of, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, Iran is. And what the West fails to understand is those are mobile. Most of those missiles are mobile launch, off of mobile launchers. They're not fixed at some particular location. The United States has a terrible record of finding mobile launchers. So Iran be driving around and the United States will think they've got it located, and then They tried to deliver a weapon at it. Really, the only way you can reliably destroy a mobile launcher is you have to have like a Predator drone, $35 million worth, flying overhead with a a missile that can fire direct down on that mobile launcher. Well, the U.S. tried that with the Houthis, and that didn't work out too well. During the 7 weeks of Operation Rough Rider, U.S. was losing 1 drone per week. And when you go back in the overall, I think they lost like 27. That's like $800 million worth of drones. We're getting serious money there. And again, they're not mass producing those. So the United States is going to face some real challenges here to, they're planning, hoping, believing this is going to be quick, quick in and out and it's over. Nope, it's going to drag on. And if they thought the 12-day war was long, this can be much longer. And Israel, the pressure that it felt during the 12-day war, that was only an appetizer, a minor taste of what's in store for them.
I think the moment that the Iranians feel that there is nothing in the Persian Gulf to be attacked, they're going to attack, they're going to escalate drastically toward Israel. And that would be a moment of, some sort of change because right now they're mostly, as you've mentioned, the target, they have a lot of targets to hit. They're mostly focused on the Persian Gulf. But when they're done with the Persian Gulf, then the main attack could happen in Israel.
Well, yeah, you've got the other thing is going to wear the Houthis. They're going to weigh in and start firing missiles, and Hezbollah. So again, Israel's now going to face fire from three sides, not just one side. And again, it's going to deplete. That they may have enough air missiles, the air defense missiles today, to cover, to maybe defeat 80% of what's coming in. But after 4 or 5 days, they could run out, and then they don't have any defense. And it's at that point that I think you'll see Iran really step up the destruction.
Starmer said that the British Army would join, they're sending fighter jets. How much of change they can bring to the battlefield?
Just one more target to be shot at. They're not, again, these fighter jets have limited range. So they'll fly maybe 600 miles. Okay, just get your map out and chart where from the border of the western border of Iran with Saudi Arabia or with Iraq, draw out 600 miles, and then figure that in that distance, you've got to be able to fly in an air refueler to refuel those jets, so that if you want them to fly into Iran and do what? Drop a bomb? Well, some of the most obvious targets are already neutralized or destroyed. But Iran has also moved a significant amount of its capability underground. So this is, the Brits are foolishly inserting themselves into this, and we will see over time the attrition of the United States. It will become apparent that it will be financially too costly for the United States to sustain operations.
Larry, let's assume Iran hits one of these, aircraft carriers. What would be the outcome of that?
Be a lot of dead sailors, and that will, well, it will create pressure on Trump to try to escalate. But then, escalate how? We can't send soldiers. That takes 6 to 8 months to get a force and to invade Iran. It'll be just a logistic nightmare, and all of that's assuming that Iran's just going to sit passively watching. Not going to be the case. What I'm fascinated by is how much pain can the world economy take with 21% of the oil flow shut down out of the Persian Gulf. That's what that's where the real pressure is going to come, because it's going to cost people money. And a lot of very wealthy people are going to be losing money, and they're not going to be happy with that. And, Iran, it's easy and really not costly for Iran to keep that Strait of Hormuz shut down. So therefore, the pressure is going to come on the United States. And I don't see, let me put it this way. If Iran foolishly makes any agreement to, okay, we'll stop shooting, in exchange for what? Lift all the damn sanctions. These sanctions are over. Lift them. And if the other side, well, no, then fine. Fuck you, and we're going to continue to destroy your bases.
Larry, what is the importance of Bahrain so far? What we've seen, a lot of attacks on Bahrain, a lot of missiles, drones getting there and attacking Bahrain. What is the importance of Bahrain, and how do you compare Bahrain, for example, to Qatar or other countries or UAE?
Well, Bahrain is important from the standpoint of the Fifth Fleet. The U.S. Navy, its base was there. So, like when the destroyers, they have these vertical launch systems, these cells in the decks of their ships, and so when they fire those off, they have to be reloaded at a port. So the port in Bahrain was an important place where they'd go and be able to refit, do maintenance on ships, because really the only other naval base, let's say in the area that's somewhat close, is down at Diego Garcia. So Bahrain is a critical base for sustaining U.S. military operations, naval operations, because at some point in the next week, the destroyers are going to run out of air defense missiles, and they're going to have to go refit. And as soon as they refit, the aircraft carrier is going to go with them, because that's their protection. That's what I mean. The United States has got a short staying power.
Larry, the main targets in Iran are these launchers that you've just mentioned. What would the United States do to destroy these launchers? It's going to be drones and fighter jets. And you've mentioned that these launchers are mobile and they can go around. And do you think that they have to have for the fighter jet? It's not it's not a cartoon. It's not a movie that going and finding, looking around to find the launcher. They have to know the exact location of that launcher to hit it. Is that the case?
Yeah. I mean, that's why the U.S. has been, they were ineffective in doing that to the Houthis. And the Houthis didn't have thousands of mobile launchers. They may have had, a dozen, 2 dozen. Iran's got a lot more, and Iran has a big country that it can drive around in and hide them. So they are not easy to find. And again, let's say you do find one. Well, if it's mobile and moving, how do the only way in the past they could keep track of it was to have a drone flying overhead, keeping track. Well, those drones get shot down. And once you lose those eyes in the sky, you're back to guessing. So that's what we're looking at here, that the ability of the United States to sustain operations and watch and locate and destroy the drones and missiles, it's very limited.
I would wonder what Donald Trump would say about the outcome of the attacks so far.
Well, there are some reports that he's quite frustrated. That I think he was sold a bill of goods that if we hit Iran like this, it would cause the regime to collapse. It ain't collapsing, and it is punching back hard and causing we still don't have a good casualty count on the part of how many U.S. soldiers, sailors, Marines have been killed. I would venture to say some have, but we don't get those numbers yet, and they're going to try to hide them. But as the body count starts piling up, and that would happen, particularly if they hit a carrier. If Iran can sink a carrier, you could see upwards of, they got a crew of about 5,000 on board. let's say half of them drown. Oh my God. That'd be the biggest loss of life in combat with respect to the Navy that the United States has experienced in over 80 years. I mean, the last one was in World War II, and probably in the Pacific in fighting the Japanese, and the Japanese used a kamikaze plane. So this is, that could be quite significant. The thing that's going to happen is this is really going to destroy, I think it'll destroy Donald Trump politically, just as it did to George H.W. Bush, who said no new taxes and then raised taxes. Trump promised no more wars. And what has he done? He started a new war.
Because he somehow feels that he's in charge, he can control everything.
Yeah.
And as he said, I can decide it's a long war or it's a short war. It's my decision. But I don't see that happening. I don't see that would be totally in the hand of Donald Trump to decide about it.
Yeah, no, the events are moving now outside of his control. He does not have control. I'm just checking. So, right now, it's going to be 11. So it's like 11:20 in Iran. So it's nighttime, and you're going to see more night operations, both by Iran and by the U.S. and Israel. And Iran, Iran's got the advantage. One of the advantages of moving those mobile missile launchers under the cover of darkness. It's one thing to pull them out in broad daylight. It's another thing to try to see what they're doing at night.
There you've mentioned aircraft carriers. How about the destroyers? It seems that the destroyers should be closer to the Iranian shore, that to the Iranian coastline. That could be a major problem for them because they're closer to Iran and they can be hit.
Yeah, I'm not real conversant on Iran's anti-ship missile capability. I know that they have it. I'm not quite sure what the optimal range is. I'm not sure if the U.S. destroyers are keeping a distance to minimize that risk. But again, they've launched cruise missiles, Tomahawks, and for those to travel, they have 1,000-mile range. So the destroyers would have to get in close enough to shore that, say, 100 miles off, the missile could still go 900 miles and make its way into the interior of Iran and go after some of the other targets. But they're also, I think, they focus on some of the Chabahar and Bandar Abbas. So those, they don't have to get in as close to take those out. They can hit those targets from, quite a ways out at sea.
Let's see what would happen, Larry. And we are following the news and to see, the situation is somehow so, it's changing up and down and going up and down. Let's see what would happen. Thank you.
We'll have something to talk about on Monday, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So stay well, and I pray that your family and Iran is safe.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, my friend. Take care.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.